What's up, full-time family? It's time to start the show. We're technically five minutes early, but originally we start 10 minutes late. So I mean, it is what it is. We're starting 10 minutes late, 5 minutes early. Either way, we're here. We're not gonna run any songs today like we normally do at the start of the show, and also there's not gonna be a panel at the end of the show because it's Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series tonight, and it comes on in like 50 minutes. Greg Hardy's returning in the main event, so I definitely want to make sure I'm at least watching the main event. I want to catch the whole show, but we've got a few topics to talk about today, so we might miss one or two fights. But that's why I'm going to try my best to get through these without distractions and as soon as possible, because I'm already, like I said, starting at 7:10 Eastern. Normally we start at 7 Eastern. I had to get to the pawn shop before they close, you know what I'm saying? Rent's like 2 days late already. But yeah, it is what it is. So get the show done, then we'll be covering Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series right after. I'll be watching those and probably just reporting on the fights, post-fight reactions. So yeah, let's get straight to it. I see my guy, Mr. Perfect 2005, in the building. What's going on, brother? Good to see you here. As the show starts, we already got 3 thumbs up. That's good to see. And already 1 baby back bagel biting bitch boy. What's up, Stewie? I know you're watching. It's crazy how it is what it is, man. But with that being said, Joe Rogan says extreme weight cutting is cheating at a higher scale than PEDs. When I saw that headline, it low-key threw me off because there has been a discussion about weight bullies. You know, guys that come in, you know, on fight day, they're like 2 divisions higher than they weighed in at because they're just really good at cutting weight. So they almost try to kill themselves to cut weight so they can get to the lowest weight class possible and have that size advantage. But I mean, honestly, that's the name of the game at this point. That's why you see some people talking about adding new weight classes so they don't have to cut as much pounds to go to the next weight class. But honestly, what's going to stop a weight bully from higher up? You know, so I don't know if adding new weight classes is the answer, but definitely there is something to having that weight advantage. I mean, we just saw Alex Perez over the weekend at UFC 227. I believe on fight night, he weighed in at 146 pounds, and he weighed in at like 125. So he actually weighed more than some of the bantamweights fighting on the card on fight night, and he was fighting at flyweight. And it might just be because he's better at cutting weight, you know. And I don't know if that makes everyone a weight bully that's just better at cutting weight. I just know some people are better at cutting weight than others. Cutting weight is a grueling process that not everybody is willing to go to the lengths that others are willing to go during the weight cutting process to get down as low as possible. So the guys that came up in wrestling, usually some of the most gritty, tough fighters, but not the most exciting styles to the casual fans. But one advantage they do have, aside from their wrestling advantage, is usually they're a lot better at cutting weight because they've been doing that throughout their entire career. So there's definitely something to cutting weight, and Joe Rogan believes that it's cheating at a higher level than PEDs. So this is what he had to say. Now, PEDs, of course, are performance-enhancing drugs. I mean, we're talking steroids and shit like that. So is weight cutting, extreme weight cutting, that's not against the rules. So I don't know necessarily if that is the case, because weight cutting is legal. Taking steroids is illegal. But Joe Rogan feels like that weight advantage might be more of an advantage than the PEDs might give you. This is what he had to say. It is stupid. What is the sanction? He said, what it is sanctioned cheating. It's sanctioned cheating, and it's cheating at a much higher scale even than PEDs. If you get 2 people and they both weigh 135 pounds, but they're both totally hydrated, and one of them has been doing steroids and one of them hasn't been doing steroids, the difference will be far less than if one person weighs in at 135 pounds and then balloons up to 160 pounds and then gets into the octagon at 160 pounds, but there's no PEDs involved. That's a much greater advantage than someone who's doing some sort of testosterone thing or something. They're compromised, but it's the benefit of being much larger might outweigh being compromised. He said, dude, if I was running shit, I'd fix that first. That would be the first thing I would fix. Now, I mean, like Joe Rogan's saying, that's I don't know if it's true as far as, you know, if you're at 135 pounds naturally, would you rather fight a 160-pound guy that made the weight, or would you rather fight a 135-pound guy that's on PEDs? I mean, I don't honestly know. PEDs, when you think PEDs, you're thinking like TRT Tour, Uberim. You know what I'm saying? You're thinking some fucking jacked guys that are fucking people up. And then whenever USADA came around and their bodies changed or whatever, I don't know if they're the same fighter. So what do you think is the case? Like in the case of, let's just say, Vitor Belfort, do you think that fighting someone like a higher weight class would be more dangerous than fighting juiced up like Vitor? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that is the case, but there definitely is an advantage when guys come in at a higher weight class. And like we pointed out yesterday on the show, 18 of 24 fighters came in above the recommended weight because they were in California. The California State Athletic Commission, you know, they have the new sanctions in place where if a fighter comes in 10% above their weight class, they will recommend they move up. Well, 18 of 24 fighters came in above that recommended weight. And 5 of the 6 fighters that didn't all lost their fights. So there's definitely something to having a weight advantage on your opponent. So you really see a lot of those better weight cutters who come in the fights and look bigger. They have success. Now, the only time that that's not the case is when they drain their bodies too much and they're drained in the fight. Sometimes that can happen as well. You know, if you cut too much weight and you're fucking your body up in the process, you can also weaken your chin a little bit, potentially get knocked out, or just be drained in your fight. So, you know, if you cut too much weight, you can actually hurt your performance. And as of right now, it's not against the rules. So I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to imagine somebody on steroids, you know, or PEDs, testosterone. Just, I don't know if that's more cheating than weight cutting. What do you guys think? Let me see what the Full-Time Family has to say about that. That's interesting. But Joe Rogan is a guy that's been advocating fighters fight closer to their natural weight class. And one thing about that too, like with Joe Rogan saying the weight advantage is bigger, there's people that point out that fighters have moved up weight classes and had success. Now, I'm not necessarily one of those people. I do believe in a weight advantage, but some people will point out Kelvin Gastelum, they'll point out Donald Cowboy Cerrone, and they'll say, look, these guys looked a lot better. They'll point out Conor McGregor. When he was cutting weight to 145, he looked, you know, like he was killing himself. Look how good he's looked since then. So some people will point out fighters that have had success actually against heavier fighters. I mean, that's what the UFC was built on. Weight advantage wasn't a thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it was open weight. Weight classes eventually came, but there's a lot of people that believe that size advantage isn't as big of a deal that Joe Rogan or even I might feel like it. I agree with Joe Rogan as far as weight cutting being a huge advantage. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Because when guys come in heavier than their opponents a lot of the times, if they're like we saw Alex Perez, Jose Torres, but just a lot of the times when guys come in and they weigh more than their opponent, like because they're way better at cutting weight, that's a huge advantage in the fight in my mind. But you know, you do have more speed going up a weight class. Daniel Cormier recently just knocked out Stipe Miocic, you know, but he actually weighed in the night up heavier than Stipe. But at the same time, you know, weight classes, some guys have had success moving up weight classes. So would you rather fight a guy in a higher weight class, or would you rather fight a guy on PEDs? Listen, I mean, I'm interested to see what you guys think about that. Howdy, Mr. P, Stamina MC in the building, Seismic Shock, the Ultimate Warrior, my motherfucking dogs, Mr. Perfect and Random Guy. He says, Weezing 336 says guys have to find their natural weight class so they can be at 100%. Ultimate Warrior says people still trying to cut 40-plus pounds for fights after the arrival of USADA. It's just not working. Yeah, you can't rehydrate the same either, so you got to be careful with that extreme weight cutting. And that's, you know, that's another point, you know, not against what Joe Rogan's saying, but just the counter argument. It's like, I mean, if guys are doing extreme weight cutting, you could argue they're hurting themselves, maybe hurting their performance, draining themselves, weakening themselves to get into a fight. PEDs, you're making yourself stronger. Everyone's on steroids. Nate Diaz, what's up, Removed Lizard Zero? EBS Rock says, we need a league for all the juice heads. There, I said it. Hey, man, that Legends League would be dope, I'm sure. I don't think that USADA should, you know, be involved in the Legends League, but hey, let's get a fucking Legends League. Take away USADA from the Legends League. So when Vitor, Anderson Silva, all of these guys, when they're ready to go chuck whoever wants to come back, whoever wants to go to it from the UFC, fuck it, let's get Rampage in there. Whoever wants to go to the Legends League, we'll just say, don't, you know, whatever the UFC used before USADA, don't go fucking crazy with it. Don't, you know, we're not going to encourage steroids, but we're just not going to have USADA. So do your thing and the Legends League. So I think that would be dope. I want Brock versus John Jones. Both juice, says EBS Rock. Yo, chill. That sounds. That's what I'm saying, bro. That's one thing USADA literally took from us. John Jones from Brock versus Brock Lesnar. We would have got to see that fight if not for USADA. It is what it is. Now we got to see it. DC versus Brock, and it's crazy. It is. We're not going to talk about that. We don't got much time today. So yeah, that's what Joe Rogan's thoughts on extreme weight cutting. He thinks that it's cheating at a higher scale than PEDs. Moving on, we also have Eddie Alvarez becoming a free agent. He decided to gamble on himself in his last fight. You know, and at first it seemed like he wasn't going to go that route. It seemed like he was going to kind of not filibuster, but just chill until he got a fight. He said before he agreed to fight Dustin Poirier a few weeks before, he was saying, I'm not accepting a fight with anybody until I get a new contract from the UFC. I'm on my last fight in the contract, and I want, to pretty much ensure my future with the UFC. It seemed like that was where Eddie Alvarez's mindset was. He wanted a new contract before he fought his last fight out. But then he changed his mind, agreed to fight Poirier, gamble on himself, and he lost that gamble. So now he's going into free agency or trying to potentially re-sign with the UFC, and he's coming off of a loss. So maybe he's even lost some bargaining power now since he lost the fight because he gambled on himself and lost that fight versus Poirier. So, and now Dana White recently joined the UFC Unfiltered podcast, and he said he has no problem if Eddie Alvarez wants to finish his career outside the UFC. So now this could be a negotiation tactic by Dana White, just letting it be known, hey, we're not going to overpay for Eddie Alvarez. If he wants to test the waters, test the waters. I mean, and honestly, it would be unfortunate, and I don't even know where Eddie Alvarez would go outside of the UFC because he had an unceremonious exit with Bellator in the past when he came to the UFC. Now, they've got a new regime since then. I believe he had his issues with Bjorn Rebney. Now he's not there anymore, so maybe he would be interested to going back over to Bellator with Scott Coker. I know we would all love to see Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez again, whether it's in the UFC or Bellator. And he's another guy who's coming up on free agency. Holy smokes. Both Michael Chandler and Eddie Alvarez are coming up on free agency. So, that fight, either the UFC would sign Chandler and we could see that fight, or Bellator might re-sign Alvarez and we could see that fight. But either way, one of these guys is going to have to, make the move and decide to keep their fighter. Because if you listen to Michael Chandler on the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan was very excited about the possibility and trying to kind of get Michael Chandler over to the UFC. That's a fight we would all love to see. But this is what just crossed my mind. What if they both become free agents and like Oscar De La Hoya or one of these other promotions get that fight we all want to see? Wouldn't that be crazy? Holy snaps. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I really would hope the UFC would re-sign Eddie Alvarez, and then I don't even know if Michael Chandler's going to be a free agent, but if he is, that would be dope to see. Eddie Alvarez versus Michael Chandler in the UFC. Selfishly, that's what I would like to see, but this is business. And Dana White's open to letting Eddie Alvarez walk if, maybe if he's asking for too much. He says, I like Eddie Alvarez. I like him personally and I like him professionally. He's at an age now where he needs to make some decisions for his family and for what will probably be the last contract he signs for the rest of his career. In a place, if Eddie Alvarez wants to go somewhere else and try, he says, I'm in a place where if Eddie Alvarez wants to go somewhere and try it, I'm cool with that. If Eddie wants to stay, I'd keep him here too. So he says, I told him that. I told him, listen, if you want to finish your career with me, I would like that. If you want to finish your career somewhere else, I have no problem with that either, man. When guys get to a point to where it's the last contract they'll ever sign, I understand. So Dana White's, it seems like, this is what it seems like to me. If you're willing to accept what we're offering you, we would love to keep you. But if you don't like the offer, it's all right if you want to go somewhere else. So, Eddie Alvarez gambled on himself and he lost the gamble. And so he's not really in a power position coming off of losing his fight. Now, if he would have beat Dustin Poirier, he would be in a great position. He would be probably getting more than what he asked for. And the UFC would for sure not be letting him go. They would probably have to match that offer because he would have gambled on himself and won. So he would have just beat one of the top fighters and be one of the best fighters in the top three. I mean, he would be looking at a potential title shot with the winner of McGregor and Khabib if he would have won against Dustin Poirier. the UFC couldn't have let him walk. I mean, what are you going to do? Give Bellator a guy that could arguably be fighting for the UFC belt? Are you going to, and on top of that, that would be giving them the Chandler Alvarez. The UFC would have had to keep him and pay him what he was asking for. But he lost the fight, and now the ball is in the UFC's court. And so we'll see what happens with Eddie Alvarez. But he's just fought the last fight on his contract, and Dana White seems to be opening to let him walk. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully he can get a deal done, but he might have to kind of bite the bullet here and take the contract he doesn't want, and that's a hard position to be in because it, like Dana White said, it could be the last contract of your career. You know, what if they're trying to give you like a fucking 5 or 7 fight deal at a price you're not happy with because you wanted more, which is why you gambled on yourself, and you're like, damn, like, I don't know. You know, Eddie Alvarez, he just lost the gamble, and sometimes it is what it is. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with Eddie Alvarez. Likely could become a free agent. And if not Bellator, of course, there's a few other options. Maybe LFA, but they've already got their lightweight $1 million tournament going, and I think that's probably something that drew a lot of people to them. You know, Eddie Alvarez, I'm sure he would have loved to have been a part of that $1 million tournament, but it's already started. Playoffs are about to start. So Bellator, Oscar De La Hoya, not a lot of options out there for someone of Eddie Alvarez's caliber. That weird guy says Eddie don't care about belts. He's had the most in his time. He's more focused on the revenue at this point. Yeah, and so if the UFC, if he's not happy with the UFC's offer, he might have to see if Bellator would be willing to give him a bigger offer. Because, yeah, it's not about the title for him. It's about money. So if Bellator would give him more money, I'm sure he would love to go there. But you never know if they will. Leon Dubson, what's popping full-time and fam? Not much. What's going on, brother? EBS Rock says, Will, hold on. If Conor wins and doesn't defend his title, maybe that might work. Yeah. Dustin Poirier, speaking of Eddie Alvarez, though, and Conor, hey, Dustin Poirier is not worried about Nate Diaz showing up at UFC 230. And this is a point that Forward Thinking, I believe, made on the panel at the end of the show yesterday. And I think Dustin Poirier made this point on the MMA Hour yesterday. This is what he had to say. He says, I don't believe the fight's in jeopardy. No. I would have heard something. I would have heard about, or I have the bout agreement in my inbox. I'm about to sign it and send it off. So everything's moving forward like it was supposed to after the press conference. I think he was just upset with coming out to a press conference and then them advertising another fight, talking about Conor like he was there when the guy's not even present. I think he just felt disrespected. So long as he shows up November 3rd, you know, I'm not sure if he signed the contract yet, but the guy follows through. I don't think him or his brother have ever pulled out of a fight with an injury or not shown up when they said they'd show up. What happens between fights and the build-up of fights is another thing, but when he signs the contract and commits to a date, he's always shown up. So with that being said, that is a great point. I mean, Nate Diaz is actually a guy that's talked about people who can't make it to the fight, you know, and some of his back and forth with Khabib or Conor McGregor or whoever. He's talking about how, or even other lightweights that don't make it to the fight. Nate Diaz is a guy that might comment on it like these motherfuckers can't even make it to war or something like that, you know. So the Diaz brothers definitely are not guys that will pull out of a fight, and that's a great sign for us because he showed up to the press conference. Now, that's almost at least a verbal agreement, even if they haven't necessarily signed it and sent it to the UFC. Nate Diaz, at least to the fans, to the people that support him, let us know he's down to fight. And so I don't think he's going to back out, even though he was a little upset at the press conference, upset enough to walk out in the middle of the McGregor and Khabib promo and speak about it afterward. And he said he don't know if he's going to show up, but hey, I believe he will. You know, he's probably been itching to fight. Poirier's a great matchup, a fan-friendly matchup. It's not somebody that's going to be trying to wrestle fuck him like as Diaz. The Diaz brothers don't really like to fight those guys, or they don't appreciate that style. We saw Nick Diaz recently call out Daniel Cormier for the way that he fought Anderson Silva. You know, you didn't fight him like me, motherfucker. So it is what it is. Hopefully Nate Diaz will show up. Dustin Poirier is pretty confident in it, and that's reassuring after what we saw at the press conference and after Nate Diaz has been out for a little while. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people were pretty much to believe in the conclusion that Nate Diaz was waiting on the Conor McGregor fight. But now that McGregor's fighting Khabib, and you know, Nate Diaz has been out for, what, going on 2 years? He's probably like, man, it's time to get back in there. And he was ready to fight, at least ready enough to show up and do the press conference with Dustin Poirier. Now, he probably didn't expect the UFC to fucking launch a McGregor versus Khabib promo almost off of his name. You could almost say they used Nate Diaz, and maybe I'm reaching here, but I really feel like that's part of the reason that Nate Diaz was upset. And it's because who was the biggest star at that press conference? One of the biggest things is the fact that Nate Diaz is not only coming back, but he's going to be at the press conference. And so you kind of use Nate Diaz, one of the one of the biggest stars of the sport. And that's where you launch McGregor versus Khabib. So if Nate Diaz was blindsided by that, it probably pissed him off. So yeah, hopefully he's still not too pissed to take the fight, but we'll see. Lawyer Nate Diaz impression, motherfucker. Now later says, Nate gonna fight, he needs money, just had a kid. Yeah, I heard that too. And also, you know, his brothers had a little bit of a situation. Let's see. Full time, have you heard of the app Live Me? If not, check it out. No, I haven't heard of that. The student Bahar Muhammad Ahmed said, if Nate Diaz doesn't show up to UFC 230, I would like to see instead Tony Ferguson versus Dustin Poirier. But I also think that fight is really happening, though, for sure. Yeah. I would love to, I'm curious to know who Tony Ferguson's going to fight next, when he's going to fight next, because he's been definitely healing up. I mean, he's sounding like he's damn near gearing up for a return. And Dana White said if he's healthy, he would like to book Tony Ferguson on the same card as McGregor and Khabib, just in case one of them pulled out. Now, I don't know if Tony Ferguson's going to be ready, cleared to fight, and put in a full camp in time for October 6th, because McGregor and Khabib is really fucking close. It's only 2 months away. Less than 2 months. Holy shit. Yo, that just gave me an idea, family. We're going to put a counter. We need a timer. We're timing the days away for McGregor and Khabib. I'm going to figure out a spot for that on the live stream. We got to have that going. The fucking live countdown to McGregor versus Khabib. Holy smokes. But yeah, Israel A. Yadong in the building. Said Dustin Ford versus Yadong. Book it. God Flawless says Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee 2. That would be a great rematch. I would like to see it. Kevin Lee looked good. Came in with staph infection. Tony Ferguson weathered the storm. Became the interim champion. That weird guy says, yeah, Cody moving down. He probably needs to for his career. Speaking of Tony Ferguson, that's a good transition because one of the topics we're going to talk about is Dustin Buchholz and what he had to say about Cody Garbrandt. But that's not next, so I guess we can't use that transition. But with that being said, we've only got 27 minutes until the kickoff of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, the return of Greg Hardy. But that's the main event, so we actually have a little more time. But I definitely want to make sure that we are off in time for us all to watch that. And I also want to cover the fight. So, UFC update. Henry Cejudo joins the pound-for-pound rankings. Now, here's the UFC's new pound-for-pound list. You got to keep in mind, fucking Henry Cejudo just beat the guy that was at number 1 on this pound-for-pound list for a long time. So, in a perfect world for Henry Cejudo, hey, I just beat the number 2 pound-for-pound. I'm number 2, right? But this is the pound-for-pound list. That's not how it works. You got to be a little more proven to be on this motherfucking list right here. Now, with that being said, he did beat Demetrius Johnson, and it didn't get him even in the top 10 of the pound-for-pound. But it did get him at number 12. And we talked about where should he, on one of these live streams, where should Henry Cejudo go. And right now, I think this low-key, it might be right where we predicted he should go. I mean, right under Chris Cyborg, right above Tony Ferguson, right above Amanda Nunes, and above Rose Namajunas. So, yeah, if you guys remember on the panel, right under Robert Whittaker. But Robert Whittaker, he's probably a little underrated on there in my opinion. I feel like he could be higher. But where would you put him? That's a fucking murderer's row, man. I mean, maybe Stipe, yeah, knocked out in the first round. Maybe Robert Whittaker, put some respect on his name. But Stipe's still the reigning fucking baddest man on the planet who deserves a rematch. So, I mean, hard to knock him down. You got Khabib up there. He's going to be fighting fucking Conor, 26-0. How do you take him down? Tyron Woodley, how do you take him down? I don't know. Maybe that is right. Maybe that is right. It's just crazy to see someone as good as Robert Whittaker ranked at number 10. But it is what it is. You got Chris Cyborg under, and then Henry Cejudo. So yeah, I like where he's at. Henry the Mouse Catcher Cejudo, says Weezing 33. You gotta chill, bro. That's crazy. That's funny, man. The mouse catcher. What if he like legit changed his nickname to that after one win? He came into the fucking rematch. Henry the mouse catcher Cejudo. That would be fucking hilarious. I thought, or what if Bruce Buffer just changed it anyway? Like he liked the nickname and ran with it, and pulled like a Steve Harvey and just announced that shit. Seismic Shock said, "I thought GSP had that spot. Which spot? At number 5, he got knocked. I don't know where GSP was before this rankings update, but." I mean, he's been out for. I like how the list is right now. Still looking for a Max Holloway update. I know that's something that we still need. Maybe he's just gonna get back to training and they're just gonna announce a fight for him. But I would like to hear it at least when he's cleared to fight. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that was a little crazy. Nicholas Moss says full-time MMA. Read my comment. Which comment was that? I just read your comment. I don't know what other comment. Oh, you said MMA. Full MMA, my prediction card for UFC versus Khabib Overeem. What? My prediction card for UFC 229. Conor versus Khabib, Lewis versus Overeem, Masvidal versus Nelson, Mendez versus Stevens, Pettis versus Formiga. Okay. That sounds like a pretty good card. Given Sure Name says Cyborg should be higher in my opinion. Yeah, you could argue that. I mean, it's kind of just because she's dominant in WMMA, but she hasn't really been able to beat crazy competition. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing about Chris Cyborg. She beats her, she fucks everyone up, she fights, but we don't really know anything about her competitors because, except for Holly Holm, I mean, she did her thing against Holly Holm, but so did Valentina. But I don't know, yeah. Chris Cyborg, she's dominant, so she should be higher, I guess, just because she's dominant. But her resume, I don't know if it's more impressive than like Robert Whittaker's or Stipe Miocic's. You know what I'm saying? I mean, just looking at the names. But just because she's dominant, I'll be down with that. And get a WMMA fighter in the top 10 or something. You know what I'm saying? Equality. Now and Later says, Tony Ferguson on like 13-fight win streak, same as DJ Street. Can't skip him. Yeah, Tony Ferguson, yeah, he's up there. I mean, you might be able to. Just because you gotta think he beat fucking Demetrius Johnson, who's pound for pound #1, and also Tony Ferguson. He's a beast. He's definitely one of the best lightweights. Could be the interim champion, which he's not. But we gotta see where he's gonna be at when he comes back. You know, as of today, Tony Ferguson's coming off a pretty nasty injury. We still need to see where he's at when he comes back. I mean, yeah, put some respect on his name for the win streak for sure. But Henry Cejudo did just beat fucking DJ. Maybe you can argue if you wanted to just flip-flop Cejudo Ferguson, but Henry Cejudo's the legit flyweight champion right now, and actually Tony Ferguson's not a champion. So I definitely like Tony Ferguson, you know, giving him his respect, but Henry Cejudo was definitely just very impressive. All right, but let's move on to the next topic. We had Henry Cejudo, he's now in the top 10 pound for pound rankings, just beat Demetrius Johnson. And then now, this is the what I was talking about earlier. Justin Buchholz thinks proper training would have helped Cody Garbrandt ahead of UFC 227. Now, is that fucking shade or what? I mean, some people might not catch that, but it's like, oh, smokes, that's almost like a jab damn near. Low key, that's how I feel like. Justin Buchholz is another guy that just recently either left or was kicked off of Team Alpha Male, whatever. Maybe he left, decided maybe it was mutual, but he's another guy that recently parted ways with Team Alpha Male, like TJ Dillashaw, like Paige Van Zandt, and they're not necessarily on the best of terms. Team Alpha Male is like a fucking really close-knit team, and it's like if you leave the team for whatever reason, it's, you're now the enemy. And Justin Buchholz, after leaving, he did rekindle, I don't want to say rekindle his flame on some weird stuff, but he did at least reconcile with TJ Dillashaw. Now, he didn't feed him no Team Alpha Male secrets, but they are at least cool again now that he's left the Team Alpha Male cult. I'm just kidding. I just thought that was funny because it's like Team Alpha Male or nobody, it feels like almost from the outside. But the Team Alpha Male Buchholz is out. Now he's reconciling with TJ Dillashaw. And I wonder, do you guys think Justin Buchholz would have been friends with TJ if he was still with Team Alpha Male? Or do you think it's kind of like, if you're with Team Alpha Male, you can't associate with the ops. It's us or TJ. If we see you associating with TJ, you. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if Justin Buchholz and TJ would have reconciled if he didn't split with Team Alpha Male. And so now, all of that in mind, he's talking about proper training with Cody Garbrandt. Who's training Cody Garbrandt? Team Alpha Male. So is that shade at his former team? He feels like proper training would have helped. Now, this is what he had to say. We'll go into his actual thoughts. It's the same deal, but I'm just telling you what I got from that. But this is what he had to say. I feel like Cody, to reach the level that he was when he won the belt, he was the best martial artist on the planet then, because the amount of training and the work he did, and it showed in his performance. I feel like he hasn't been able to reach that level again. I feel like he has all the talent. TJ doesn't have his number at all. But with proper training, it's anyone's game. TJ was saying Cody drops his left hand when he throws his right hand, and that's the shot he caught him with. Well, it was the same hand, but it was completely a different punch. In the first fight, TJ landed a right hook from southpaw. In the fight last night, he's talking about UFC 227, he just hit him with the right hand. He just rolled with that right and came back with the right. He did a lot of boxing for this fight and was prepared for that inside fight range. He knew when Cody was throwing hard, he would be exposed, and he was right. It was a perfectly masterful game plan. I feel like Cody Garbrandt, properly conditioned, is because his hands down are something he got away with for a long time, of his speed and his reflexes. I feel like that's based a lot on conditioning as well. To be able to know where your head's at and to be able to have reflexes the more tired you get. I think the defensive thing is a technical issue for sure, but it's also a training issue, a cardio issue. And he went on to talk about who's potentially the greatest bantamweight at all time, which I'll talk about in a second. But he's saying that, you know, Cody, he doesn't feel like TJ Dillashaw necessarily has his number, but with proper training and a little more work, maybe Cody could actually have beat TJ Dillashaw. So interesting, coming from former Team Alpha Male member Justin Buchholz and coach, who has now reconciled with TJ Dillashaw. No, they're not fucking best friends hanging out every day, but they just have had conversations on good terms since Justin Buchholz left the team. So interesting situation playing out there. And of course, if you're keeping tabs now, we already said rang off Paige Van Zant, who split with Team Alpha Male, and now her boyfriend Austin Vanderford, Mr. Van Zant, he actually has been fighting Team Alpha Male members, and now I believe he's up 2-0 on Team Alpha Male guys. So it's like she split for whatever reason. I mean, it's kind of, if you're keeping up with it, you know, the details we talked about are on a live stream. It's kind of interesting, everything going on over there. So just something that added to that story. So with that being said, Curtis Blaydes calling out Stipe Miocic for a potential heavyweight fight, not a title fight, but still a #1 contender fight and a title eliminator for sure. Curtis, and he called him out respectfully, which is, you know, dope to see. Curtis Blaydes isn't going on that hoorah, Stipe's a piece of shit, Francis Ngannou's a piece of shit, I want a title shot. He's not doing that, but who knows? Maybe he should. I mean, Brock got the title shot, but this is what he had to say. Stipe Miocic, I appreciate all you taught me 5 years ago. It was an honor to be a part of your camp. With the current situation, I'm sure we don't want to wait until spring. Are you free 11/10 for 25th anniversary card? And hey, I mean, maybe Stipe Miocic would be open to a rematch unless he wants to wait out. And I actually think Stipe Miocic might be looking at waiting out here. You know, he just had his new baby girl. He could definitely use some time off. I mean, why not? It's not like he really needs the money. But if he is itching to get back in there and get a win under his belt, he's got a willing and also deserving opponent. And it's a guy that's not calling him out of his name. So I would definitely like to see the fight. The UFC 25th anniversary card, I believe, is in Denver, which is where Curtis Blaydes has relocated. I think he's training with Elevation Fight Team down there in Denver, Colorado. So he was already a fucking scary heavyweight prospect, already beat Mark Hunt and Overeem, and he's just getting even more deadly. He's only like 27 years old. Holy shit, am I high on Curtis Blaydes. Now, he's not going to be a guy that goes out on that rah-rah talking shit, but he's going to have the legit skills to beat pretty much anyone thrown at him. I feel like he's a problem in the heavyweight division. But it's the heavyweight division, so anything can happen. But Curtis Blaydes is a problem, and he's got the right mindset. He's already beat Mark Hunt in Mark Hunt's home. He came back to UFC Chicago, fought Alistair Overeem, 3rd round TKO in that fight. And now he's calling out Stipe Miocic. I mean, he's already knocking on the title's doorsteps. And if he was able to beat Stipe, he'd probably kick those doors down. And for sure be fighting the winner of Brock and Cormier unless John Jones comes back. And that's also something to keep in mind. if Stipe is waiting for an immediate rematch, which a lot of people feel he deserves, I'm sure he could wait out until DC and Brock fight and fight the winner of that fight. You know, I'm sure the fans would be cool with Stipe sitting out for a title shot because people feel like he deserves it. And he's just had a new baby on top of that. You know, it's not like he's just sitting out because he's waiting on the title. He's actually got some shit. He's been defending the belt. He's been active as a champion. Just lost the belt. Fuck it. It is what it is. Had a new baby. Let Stipe rest for a little while. But if he does decide to do that and wait on Brock Lesnar and Daniel Cormier, what if John Jones reappears? Then he might have to wait again, right? If he decided to wait on the winner of Lesnar and Cormier, and then Jones comes back, Jones probably wants the winner of Lesnar and Cormier, and that's the big money fight, so it probably happened. So then he might end up having to fight Curtis Blaydes then, but at least he would have had some time off. So we'll see what happens, but I like to call out from Curtis Blaydes. Definitely a deserving fight as well. He's not asking for a title shot, even though you could argue in the heavyweight division, there's not a lot of guys knocking on the title's doorstep. If there were no clear contenders, Curtis Blaydes could be getting the title shot next. But hey, he's looking to fight at home as well on the UFC's 25th anniversary card. It would definitely be a big fight. And also, as a fan, I would love to see Stipe Miocic back. But I also understand if he wants some time off, so we'll see what happens. What the fuck if Nick Diaz comes back too, says Seismic Shock. Yo, that's a possibility. EBS Rock says, full-time, what are your thoughts on Grand Prix style competition in the UFC? I don't think it works as well in the UFC, but I'm still like, hey, fuck it, let's try it. It would be fun, especially in a couple of divisions. Like when they were talking about Nate Diaz versus GSP, Conor McGregor versus Khabib in like a mini lightweight tournament, that was bonkers. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the biggest tournament you could ever have. But other than that, what do you do? Like a 8-man tournament, and then who would it consist of? In the UFC, you would probably have to go with what? Like the legitimate top 8 guys. Or would you be able to skip a guy and like, let me pull up the UFC rankings. Like, let me show you why I don't know if it would work as well. Like in Bellator, they don't really have a top 15, you know, so they can really plug in kind of who they want. Like in their heavyweight Grand Prix, they got a few middleweights, they got a few light heavyweights. They don't even got all heavyweights. You know, they can kind of do what they want because they're Bellator and people don't have the same expectations. But in the UFC, you know, I don't know if you can really do that. Like, let's look at fucking lightweight. So, or just any division, same scenario. Who do you put in? The champion and then the next 7 guys? Or, and if you do that, that means while that whole tournament's going on, none of these guys have an opportunity to move into the even top 8. They're all relegated to just fighting themselves while you have these tournaments going on. Unless, I guess, they fight the loser of one of the fights. So, I mean, maybe you could do it, but the reason is, it's like, how do you choose? Do you just go with the top 8? Or do you pick, like, Nate Diaz is ranked 11. I'm sure they would love to have him in the tournament. Could you skip, like, the fucking number 7th ranked guy just to put Nate Diaz in the tournament? Like, it's just a little different because they've got a deeper pool. Or do you have, like, a 16-man tournament? Maybe in the UFC, you do a 16-man tournament. All your top 15 and the champion. That's 16 fighters. Woohoo! But at the same time, no one else would really be able to get into the top 15 while you do that. So maybe if they like trimmed the roster and then they could, that might be interesting. I'm like, that sounds kind of interesting. I don't know if it would work, but in the UFC 16-man tournaments, that's literally perfect if you add the top 15 and your champion. That's 16 fighters. Boom, boom, boom. That would be crazy. That would be super fun, but I just don't know how it would play out. But I'm down to try it. You know what I'm saying? Like, fuck it, let's mix it up. So 8-man tournaments I think would be a little hard, but 16-man tournaments, I think would be fun. Haha, those were crazy. Given Trinity said I forgot who it was, broke his hand in the semifinal fight, still came out in the final and won. I remember when they did the whole tournament in one night. Yeah, man, I watched UFC 1, 2, and 3 not too long ago. I'm trying to watch all of them, like all the pay-per-views leading up to where I started as a fan. So, yeah, I'll probably be watching more. But, yeah, that shit was fun. I mean, kind of crazy, too. I mean, you started to see more injuries happening where, at least as far as I was, up to UFC. I might need to watch UFC 4, too. But, yeah, it's some of the injuries definitely derailed some fighters. Some guys would fight through it, but I remember one time there was a final. I don't know if it was supposed to be like Shamrock or Gracie. One of them was supposed to be in the final, and they found out Gracie was injured, so it wasn't Gracie. Once they found out Gracie was injured, they were like, well, shit, I got fucked up too. The whole reason I was here was to beat Gracie and be crowned the champ. I don't want to fight this big-ass dude when I'm injured if Gracie's not fighting. So that was a weird situation, and ended up the two fighters who won their fights ended up not being able to make it to the finals because both the winners were injured. So it ended up being like the losers in the finals just because both the winners were injured. So that was a weird situation, and that's part of the reason I don't think it can happen on the same night. But what you could do is have different rounds in the same night. Like Bellator just announced their 4 fights for the first round. Like you could have all 4 of those welterweight fights on the same night. Now you couldn't have them continue and fight each other next, but you could at least have the first round on the same night. That was the days of nut shots and eye pokes and everything else legal, says that weird guy. Hell yeah. Royce Gracie's fucking it up with the jiu-jitsu back in the day, bringing out the fucking oblique kicks from way back when. Connor Lodge says, anyone watch Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series? It comes on in about 9 minutes. That's what we're trying to get through to. Greg Hardy's fight doesn't come on for about an hour. So, I mean, I don't want to miss any fights, but I might miss the first or second fight just finishing up the show. But, yeah, I'm definitely got to be watching for Greg Hardy's fight tonight. I mean, who knows where he's going to go. But you know what I'm saying? It's definitely appealing, a heavyweight. I mean, I used to be a fan of the NFL before even MMA, so I'm curious to see how. I know they don't have the technical skills to fucking beat a technical fighter, but their athleticism and, you know, they in the heavyweight division, they've got a lot better chance. We saw what Francis Ngannou was able to do without any grappling or cardio, essentially. Well, this motherfucker's going to be probably a little more dangerous than Francis Ngannou, and also probably a little better cardio. Now, still left to be seen is how his fight cardio is, but he's a motherfucking monster, so he's got a chance to at least knock some motherfuckers out the frame, and he's going to be trying to do that again tonight. All right, Israel Adesanya on Derek Brunson. The UFC made him call me out. He said Derek Brunson really didn't want any smoke, but the UFC made him call me out. This is what he had to say. He didn't call me out. The UFC made him call me out. He wouldn't even dare say my name. I feel like if he turned down a fight with me, it would make him look bad. They forced him to take that fight because he wouldn't dare call me out by himself. He was trying to make it out like, sign the contract. But I was like, bro, I signed the contract 2 days ago. What are you on about? This ain't WWE, and I keep up that image. But I think he's in over his head on this one. He's never been in a fight like this. I know he's fought Anderson Silva, but he hasn't been in a fight with anyone like me. So I think it's a new territory for him. And Derek Brunson actually had success against Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva got his hand raised, but it was a robbery, not going to lie. It is what it is. Anderson Silva's a GOAT. He might get a robbery here or there, especially if it's in Brazil. So Anderson Silva got his hand raised, but Derek Brunson did have success against Anderson Silva. And a lot of people feel like Israel Adesanya is a little bit like Anderson Silva 2.0, John Jones 2.0. I mean, the comparisons are almost crazy to think about. But in his last fight versus Brad Tavares, I think he silenced a lot of the critics, and he looked amazing. So maybe Derek Brunson will be able to have the same success against Adesanya. Now, you got to keep this in mind. He wasn't able to knock Anderson Silva out. So if he's not able to knock Israel Adesanya out, do you think he's going to be able to beat him, you know, in a decision? Israel Adesanya is not Anderson Silva in a sense. You're not going to just be able to do everything you were able to do against Anderson Silva, who was a little past his prime. You could argue Israel Adesanya is either entering his prime or in his prime, but he's not past his prime. So it's not going to be the same fight. It's not going to be as easy, and it's crazy to say easy, but it's not. It might be a little more difficult, I'll say, than the Anderson Silva fight. And he wasn't even able to finish Silva, so there's no necessarily reason to believe he's going to finish Adesanya, except for the fact that he's a very powerful striker, and he's knocked out a lot of guys. So he continued to say, I want to punish him, but I don't think he's going to last a round because of the way he fights. Even at the press conference, if not for Dana White, he would have ran straight into whatever I wanted. I already had established my distance with hand on his chest, and he's running forward with his chin up. That already tells me how he's going to approach this fight. So he's ready to knock Derek Brunson out. He's not into it. These guys have gotten to actually pretty solid back and forth. He was calling him like the last gender bender. the last something else bender after he got in trouble for calling him the last gender bender. He switched it up. The last pretender. I mean, these guys, you know, definitely don't like each other coming into this fight. Israel Adesanya still got a chip on his shoulder, looking to let everybody know he's one of the best mixed martial artists up and coming in the division, and he would love to knock out Derek Brunson in the process. So, great fight for UFC 230. Now, yesterday we talked about Joseph Benavidez and Ray Borg being booked for UFC 229, and I was like, yo, that don't even sound right. They've got the order of protection, right? Because Ray Borg was one of the people in the whole Conor McGregor bus attack, and his cornea got scratched, so his fight was canceled, and afterward, him and Michael Chiesa got protection orders against Conor McGregor, and those protection orders say that Conor McGregor can't be within a certain amount of feet of these guys, or he violates his order and could potentially go to fucking prison, or you know, face the sanctions of his charges if he goes within a certain vicinity of these guys. So they're not supposed to be in the same room. Now, some people thought maybe yesterday on the panel, they thought, well, maybe since it's in a different state, it's not in effect. But after looking into it a little bit more, I actually believe Conor McGregor's not supposed to be around Ray Borg no matter where they're at. You know, so if Conor McGregor and Ray Borg would have both been at UFC 229, it doesn't matter it wasn't in New York. They would have still, now they probably could have fought on the same card, they would have just had been technical about it. Like somebody would have had to like reroute their path. Like if Conor McGregor's taking the elevator, Ray Borg's got to like take the stairs, the back set of stairs, or vice versa. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think Conor McGregor would be the one taking the back stairs. So, I mean, it's a weird situation, and it probably could have played out, but they would have just had to be wary. Okay, Conor McGregor's over here. Make sure Ray Borg's over there until Conor's done over here. It would have been a whole weird situation. So instead, Benavidez versus Ray Borg is Instead, Benavidez versus Ray Borg is booked for UFC Denver, so we don't have to worry about that whole debacle. Now UFC Denver, the 25th anniversary card, has these three fights: Benavidez versus Borg, Cerrone versus Perry, and Sung Jung versus Edgar. It's going to be a stacked card. The UFC's 25th anniversary, going back to where it all started. UFC 1 was in Denver. I mean, it's where it all started. 25th anniversary, 25 years, coming back home. You can imagine the card's going to be stacked. And now we got Benavidez versus Borg added to the card. Next, we've got UFC champ Nicco Montano dishing on health ordeal and public opinion before title defenses. Nicco Montano, she does look pretty good. You know what I'm saying? She's looking pretty good right there. But other than that, she was getting a bad rap for, it seemed like, avoiding a fight with Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, first it was an ankle injury, which she says she's kind of still dealing with, but it's one of those injuries that fighters fight through. It's probably never going to be 100%, so it's either you're going to retire or fight on it. And you hear this all the time. No fighter really comes in at 100%. Everyone's dealing with some sort of injury. If you went through a fight camp, if you went through a training camp and then a weight cut and all of that, you probably are not coming into your fight at 100%, so that's not even realistic. But then after the ankle injury, after Valentina was calling her out, she was, or it seemed like Valentina Shevchenko was for sure next in line for the title fight. She also, after the ankle injury, had a tonsillectomy where she got her adenoids removed. And so once the tonsillectomy came around, people were for sure that Nicco Montano was ducking. And that's not too far-fetched to believe, considering Valentina Shevchenko's one of the best pound-for-pound, if not the best pound-for-pound WMMA fighter on the planet. And when you're talking pound-for-pound, if you're talking about somebody that has success at multiple weight classes, there's not really anybody you could argue has had more success at multiple weight classes than Valentina Shevchenko. Chris Cyborg's probably the greatest female fighter of all time, but we haven't seen her fight at lightweight or 135. She's fucking girls up at 145 pounds. And Amanda Nunes, who actually beat Valentina Shevchenko, we haven't seen her fight in the UFC at 145 or at the highest level. And also, she can't make 125. So if you're talking multiple weight classes, Amanda Nunes is just at 135. And she's actually reluctant to go up to 145 right now. So Valentina Shevchenko, she's got the win over Holly Holm, Juliana Pena, I believe. She fought two close fights with Amanda Nunes, and that was all at 135, and now she's making it to 125. Absolutely demolished Priscilla Cachoeira. She was the Muay Thai champion, I believe, at 125 pounds, and now she's going to be getting her title shot. So, Valentina Shevchenko, definitely one of the best fighters, and in her last performance specifically, she brutalized Priscilla Cachoeira to the point that people were mad at the referee, like, bro, save her. She's in there with the motherfucking real boogie woman, and you're just letting her fucking die. Like, fucking, if she dies, Mario Yamasaki and shit. And so, she took such a beating in that fight, the referee still hasn't reffed another fight to this date. So with that being said, it's not too far-fetched to think somebody's trying to kind of avoid the fight. Also, Nicco Montano was coming out and saying things like, well, if she wants to wait until I'm healthy, like insinuating she might need to take another fight in the meantime and while I'm healthy. Like, yeah, if she wants to wait, I guess she's next. But, I mean, if she wants to wait, like, type stuff. So, definitely a lot of fans that believe that she was ducking her taco. With that being said, this is what she had to say. If anyone has ever had a tonsillectomy, you know, I couldn't talk. I couldn't drink water or anything for a while. Everyone getting nosy about where's Nicco and blah, blah, blah. I'm over here on my deathbed. Okay, she was on her deathbed. Maybe a little over-exaggeration, but that's how she felt. She couldn't fucking drink water, got her shit removed, and she was like, people are blowing up her phone like, are you ready to fight Valentina? Meanwhile, she's over here fucking got, you know, holding her throat and shit. That's funny to think about, but maybe a little of an over-exaggeration. Either way, she says, I think for people who can read between the lines and grasp what they were trying to get at, I stood up for myself. I still don't understand why people would not. Like, they're too afraid to speak out against somebody who's trash-talking them just in fear of losing supporters or fans. To me, this is what I've always been doing. There's nothing different about my mindset and my progression with my MMA career now that I'm in the UFC. I'm still going to stand up for myself when I think it's appropriate. And then she continued to say, I'm just going to have to get used to the pain, but there's not one fighter that goes into the octagon at 100% health. So she's going into the fight with Shevchenko. Montano will still have to deal with her foot. She says it's now arthritic from training, but she'll suck it up and keep moving. So she's saying she's not coming in at 100%, already really giving herself an excuse that she doesn't need. I mean, yeah, no fighter comes in at 100%, but it don't matter if you had a fucking bionic ankle in this fight, you probably ain't beating Valentina Shevchenko. I'm sorry. This is not no mystic full-time prediction where I come in like, you guys ready for Nicco to beat Valentina? No. Mystic full-time cannot predict that for you. I can't predict a miracle. Henry Cejudo was a different story because he actually had the skills. It's not happening. So with that being said, fuck it. Give you 2 bionic arms and give you a brand new set of adenoids. You still ain't beating Valentina. I'm sorry. But now the fight's booked, UFC 228, same night as Darren Till versus Tyron Woodley. Can't wait. And if she did pull off this upset, I mean, it would be crazy. I mean, you know, you say they always got a puncher's chance and a submission's chance, and you know we all counted Rose Namajunas out, but I don't know if Nicco Montano is even Rose Namajunas. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see what happens. You always, you know, you look like a jackass in the end. She's got no chance, and then she fucking pulls off the upset. I'll just say if Nicco Montano pulls off this upset, in my opinion, it might be the biggest upset in WMMA history. I can't think of any other fight. I mean, so yeah. But it is what it is. I mean, what if she fucks around and knocks out Valentina? Holy shit. You can't even think that that's going to happen. But hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. I definitely am picking Valentina in that fight for my prediction. And I think it would almost be irresponsible to not do so. You'd probably be trolling if you're picking Nicco or related to her. Given your name said Team Nicco. No, the fuck you didn't. Not the guy that was calling out the panel for picking Cejudo. And I know you ain't picking Nicco. But with that being said, this is what's about to be coming on. It actually just came on 7:04 p.m. So into the show about perfect timing. 40 watching now. Hey, what's going on, people? Make sure you hit the thumbs up button. Only 17 of you have. So if you don't have a bagel present that you're presently biting on, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. But here's the full card for Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. We got the African Savage Kennedy Nejchukwu taking on Dennis Bryant, the Beard. That's the fight we're probably missing right now, so I'm just going to run over the card real fast, and we're going to get in this show so we can tune in. J.R. Coffrin, we got a featherweight bout with J.R. Coffrin taking on Alex Gilpin. The previous fight was contested at light heavyweight, so light heavyweight, featherweight. Then we got a lightweight bout coming up between Joseph Lowry, Devontae Smith. We've got Bobby Moffitt taking on Jacob Kilburn in another featherweight bout. And then, of course, the heavyweight main event, Greg Hardy versus Tabaris Gordon. Both of these guys heavyweights. And even though Tabaris looks like the bigger fighter, Greg Hardy's weighing in at 265. It looks like he's actually cutting weight, I believe, to make heavyweight, at least from what it's saying right here. Now, that might not be correct, but Greg Hardy's still a motherfucking monster. Former Dallas Cowboy, Carolina Panther. I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to do that. I was say like woman be, but I'm not going to do that. But with that being said, let's tune in to Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, and we'll be back here live tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. I don't think anything crazy should come up, but at the same time, if an opportunity does come up tomorrow, I got to take it, because if I find some sort of handiwork somewhere. But yeah, we should be back 100%. We should 100%. It's like an oxymoron, but you get the point. We'll be back 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, every weekday, full-time MMA live. Thank y'all for coming through, and we shall tune in to Tuesday Night Contender Series. Greg Hardy's back. It's the return of the woman. I'm just kidding. All right, let the full-time family know what you think in the comments. I'm out.